As part of my constant pursuit of the perfect board game collection, I get rid of a lot of games, but sometimes I'm just wrong. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm going over 10 games that left my collection and came back. Or more specifically, 10 games that left my collection and came back that I was wrong about, because there will be another video at some point in the future, don't know exactly when, of games I got back and turns out I was right the first time. That happens more often. You see, I get rid of a lot of games. I'm always trying to fine-tune my collection, to pick the games that always spark joy, that I want to play, that I crave, that I'm always interested in tabling, and so that means I get rid of games. A lot. I cycle games. You see them all the time, my games leaving the collection videos, but that doesn't mean that I don't have regrets after. Which means sometimes I get games back, sometimes I do, and sometimes I shouldn't have. This video is inspired, I guess, by Devin Talks Tabletop. I did a top 10 list with him. 10 games I'd removed from the Board Game Geek Top 100 at some point. I'll link to that down below, as well as his channel. You should definitely subscribe. When he hits 10,000 subs, he's getting a hamster. But aside from that, the point of this video is 10 times I got games back and I was wrong the first time. I should not have gotten rid of them. That does not mean that they won't leave again. That can always happen. We don't know. But for right now, at least I was wrong. There will, like I said already, be a list of 10 games I got back that I got rid of again, because that does happen too, but that's not today's topic. And as usual, in true Board Game Co style, we will have 14 games. The 10 on the floor next to me, and the 4 on the table, because there's two kind of adjacent categories that didn't perfectly fit into the top 10. You see, the first two are going to be A Feast for Odin and Orleans. These are both games that I played. I played each of these one time, I got rid of them, and then I got them back. Because I had second thoughts, I had doubts. Both of them were great experiences, and both of them are highly, highly rated games, and so I was like, I liked them, I just wasn't sure if I would pull them out and play them compared to other games, but there's enough buzz about them, they're enjoyed by enough people. Orleans also does some extra things when you have the expansions, in terms of solo and co-op play and other aspects, and I got them back. With the goal to see if I'm right or wrong, and I think I will end up keeping them. But I also don't know for sure, and until I play them again, I can't say for sure. So these two over here, they're part of my I think I'm wrong about, but I'll let you know at some point. When I eventually play them more, I'll review them, I guess, so we can talk about them more in that sense. But for right now, they are 10 games I got rid of and got back, and maybe I'm wrong about. I don't really know. Feast for Odin, let's talk about the games a bit. A Feast for Odin is a polyomino, sort of polyomino game. A heavy worker placement game from Uwe Rosenberg, in which you're going to be placing down your workers on a variety of things to get a variety of things as you build out your little polyomino grid of jewelry and resources and all these things that are fitting into your grid with specific placement rules, and then other islands you can get. It's basically the heaviest polyomino game you can play, and it's beautifully done. Beautifully done. I got rid of it because I thought it was a little long, and I didn't think I'd pick this over other games, including games like Le Havre right next to it over here, but we'll see. Time will tell. And then Orleans. Orleans is an interesting bag-building worker placement game that was very, very solid. I don't know why I got rid of it. I liked it, and then I just didn't think that I would play it that much that often, and so I did get rid of it, but I liked it. We'll see. Reprinted by Capstone Games, I believe. TMG unfortunately went out of business. I think Capstone Games took over the license. I think they have like a full big box something coming. Don't know exactly. We'll see, but excited to dive back into it. We'll see when that actually happens. On the other side, we have two games that are almost the reverse conversation. These aren't games I was wrong about. When I got rid of Through the Ages and when I got rid of Le Havre, I knew I loved these games. I knew that they were excellent experiences, and it wasn't 10 games I was wrong about, it was 2 games that I probably shouldn't have gotten rid of, but I knew how good they were the entire time. You see, Le Havre is one of my first loves in board gaming. I don't remember exactly when, but it has to be my first year of board gaming. I dove into a bunch of Uwe Rosenberg games. Agricola was like the number 2 or 3 game of all time. I had to try that out. And Agricola was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed Agricola. And so I picked up all of Uwe's games one at a time, everything he had available back then, which did not include Feast for Odin. This is early days. I picked up Agricola, I picked up Le Havre, I picked up At the Gates of Loyang. I want to say there were other games. Were there other games? It might have been just those 3, the heavy Uwe Rosenberg games back then. I feel like there was another one, but I don't remember for sure. I don't remember for sure. Maybe Glass Road? Was Glass Road the other one? Either way, I picked up Uwe's games, and I dove into them. Agricola left my collection, and Le Havre became my go-to. Eventually, At the Gates of Loyang left my collection too. Amazing game, but something with these Euro worker placement, not worker placement, something with these Euro engines is sometimes you find yourself falling into these optimization engines where multiple plays, especially multiple plays in a short period of time, can have you feeling like you've seen what the games have to offer, that you've seen what they do, and you don't necessarily need to continue playing them forever. And while that remains true for At the Gates of Lang, great game, but I've played it a lot, I don't need to dive into it again right now. Agricola, amazing game, but I only played it once in the past 6 years, and that was recently, so that I could compare it to Converna, which I'll do at some point. But Le Havre was my longest lasting love from all those games. I love the worker placement in this game. I love the buildings. I love the resource engines you have. The other one was Aura et Labor. That's the other one, Aura et Labor, which is awesome. I love Aura et Labor as well, but Le Havre to me is better and cleaner and smoother and functionally does 95% of the same stuff. But I love Le Havre. Absolutely adore it. Eventually I got rid of it though because it was a long game and it wasn't getting tabled. And then I realized that after a year of it being gone, I realized that there was no way for me to have Le Havre not be in my collection. It's just too good of a game. I've only played it once in the 2 or 3 years since I got it back, but it's a game that's worth owning even if you only play it once every 5 years. Most games I don't feel that way about, but Le Havre I do. I think Le Havre is an incredible experience and I'm happy to have it back. And I feel the same way about Through the Ages. Through the Ages is another game that I never once thought to myself, hey, this isn't a good game. From the first time I played Through the Ages until the point where I got rid of it after a 6-hour-long 4-player game that started at 10 o'clock at night and went till 4 in the morning. These are not things you can afford to do when you have children that like to wake you up at 6:30 every single day. 2.5 hours of sleep. That's the price I paid to play Through the Ages. 2.5 hours of sleep. The next day I was a wreck, and possibly in that aspect of being a wreck, I got rid of this game. I didn't actually get rid of it the next day, but that was the last play I had of it before I got rid of Through the Ages. I realized Through the Ages was an incredible experience, but when I played the app that they have, a great app, I can play Through the Ages in an hour on the app. I can enjoy it and get 80% of the experience. There is something to be said about that in-person experience, that in-person game of Through the Ages where you sit down for 4 hours and play it. And I say 4 hours instead of 6 because I will never play this game with 4 players again. I have decided that, at least when the app is a different story, but when playing it in person, 3 players is how I play Through the Ages. And even at 3 players, it's 3.5 to 4 hours for the game, but it's such a good 3.5 to 4 hours. Unlike Le Havre, I've actually played this 5 or 6 times since I got it back, since I realized I made a mistake, since I realized that this game is worth owning, even if I'm only playing it incredibly infrequently. The app I still play on a regular basis, but if I'm playing the physical version of Through the Ages incredibly infrequently, it is still worth owning. It is that good of an experience. You're building out a civilization, you're drawing cards, you're spending your action economy, you're building up your engine, you're attacking others, you're defending, you're colonizing colonies, you're doing a ton of things that are absolutely a tremendous amount of fun building out your tableau in Through the Ages. One of the best Vlaada Chvátil games of all time. I really need to play more Mage Knight. And now that we're 10 minutes into the video and we've covered none of the actual 10 games we're talking about, it's a good thing I have timestamps down below for all my videos. Let's go ahead and dive into the 10 games I got rid of. 10 games I played, I got rid of them. I thought that they weren't good enough to keep around, and now they have been here for quite some time. There are no guarantees that anything stays forever. Everything is always on a potential chopping block, but these certainly have stuck around for a while. Starting off with, probably should have started with the smaller one. Where'd my small... There's a box on the floor over there that fell down. I'm going to have to go get it at some point in this video. So let's start off on this side, going through the Oracle of Delphi first. The Oracle of Delphi from Stefan Feld is a game that... It's a little bit more of a fiddly Stefan Feld experience. I love Stefan Feld. I have enjoyed nearly every single game he's put out. Aquasphere is one that didn't really do it for me. I don't know exactly why, but I think it's the only Stefan Feld game that I can remember playing and thinking, I don't need this one. But every other Stefan Feld game I've played, I've enjoyed. I have not kept them all, but I've enjoyed them all. I thought they've all done something phenomenal, and Oracle of Delphi is one that I played it. I got rid of it because it was a little more fiddly compared to other Stefan Feld games. There's all these other things going on. You're moving your ship around a bunch of islands, you're picking up statues, you're dropping them down, you're fighting beasts. The whole theme, it almost feels like it's not a Stefan Feld game in the theming of what this game is doing. But functionally it is. You roll dice, you assign them, there's all these ways of optimizing your actions, everything you do gives you points, you're trying to spread as fast as possible in different ways and doing different things. It is a different Stefan Feld game than your usual experience, possibly most similar to Amerigo in terms of the open-endedness of the world, possibly a little similar to Luna in terms of the execution of the actions, the way the game plays out, but it does manage to feel different. Amerigo is another game, by the way, that I got back that I need to see if I love again. I played that game a few times and got rid of it, but arguably Amerigo should be with Orleans and Feast for Odin, but I forgot about it, so it's not. But this game, the Oracle of Delphi, I fell back in love with it during the pandemic, during COVID-19, when we were playing, for our game groups went online for 6 months as things slowly settled to not normal, but the new normal, I guess. But there were 2 Stefan Feld games, another one that will show up on this list as well, that we just excessively played over Yukata. Yukata.de, another gaming website out there that I thoroughly enjoy, and we played a ton of the Oracle of Delphi, and I learned to love this game again. I always liked it, don't get me wrong, but I played it like 2 or 3 times, and I was like, that's a good game, but I don't need to keep it. I'll keep the other Stefan Feld games. This one can leave. But it's good. It's so good at what it does. It's so clean. It's so elegant. It's actually not clean. It's messy. It's so messy, but it's so good while being so messy. The action optimization, the building out of your improvements, the trying to go for the various goals, everything in the Oracle of Delphi is a lot of fun. I really enjoy this, I guess, another TMG game that we may or may not ever see again, but Stefan Feld, the Oracle of Delphi, currently out of print. I hope we see this reprinted. I would not mind if Queen Games reprinted it. It will cost you an arm and a leg, but at least it'll be in print and available to buy, because right now it still costs you an arm and a leg, so it's not like that will change much either way. From there we have Rajas of the Ganges. Rajas of the Ganges from Hoochie Games. I think it's called Hoochie. Is it Hooch? Hooch? Probably Hooch. It's not an I, it's an exclamation mark. Hooch Games, and from R&R. Rajas of the Ganges is a game that I played once and thought it was fine, and then I got rid of it. Again, I don't know why. Sometimes I just get rid of games, because whenever I play a game, there's different aspects. There's always that immediate love of a game. Very often, there is that high of something new, something I just dove into for the first time, and something I really enjoyed, and that happens to me on a regular basis. It's one of the reasons why I always try to wait a week plus, if possible, between my first experience with the game before I review it. I like to let the game settle a bit, that initial high of, this was a fun experience, but will I feel compelled to play it again? Will I feel compelled to pull it out over the many other games I have? It's always that balance, because I like games, I like the experiences, but sometimes an experience is an experience because it was good to dive into. But just like you don't need to rewatch all the movies, you don't need to replay all the games. Sometimes the exposure to something new was already enough of a high in itself, and something about the Rajas of the Ganges, I felt it was that. I felt it was a really good game that I didn't need to dive back into. But I really like it. A lot. At some point along the way, I don't know exactly when, maybe it was 4 or 5 months down the road, I wanted to play Rajas of the Ganges again. Now, that doesn't happen as often. More often than not, when I get rid of a game that I think was a good experience, but when I don't need to play again, usually I'm right. Usually it was a good experience, but I don't have the drive to play that. Very often I have the drive to play a lot of games in my collection, but you might have been a great game to play, but I just didn't feel the need to play you again. Again, you don't feel the need to rewatch every movie. Some are good enough that are worth it. It's not any different with games. It's not any different with books. Sometimes exposure to something new has an additional high that you don't get that second or third time in. But I had regrets about getting rid of it. And so I picked it up again. And I played it. And I played it again. And I played it again. And I love Rajas of the Ganges. Rajas of the Ganges has thoroughly grown on me as a game that I love diving into. That initial high was there, but so was the subsequent follow-up of wanting to play this dice placement game. You see, it is dice placement. You're going to be rolling dice. You're going to be placing them down on a variety of locations to get a variety of bonuses, to up your karma, to be mindful of the 2 tracks that you're trying to cross. Your influence, your fame, I guess. I can't remember what it is. It's fame and wealth or something like that. The 2 tracks you win when you have your markers cross each other. So you can be really good at wealth, really good at fame, or a combination of both. As you try to play your little mini game of your tiles and how you match them to the various endpoints. There's a lot of things going on in Rajas, and it works really well. The various packs, they have a bunch of modules. They have like 2 different module boxes that give you small ways to mix up the experience that keep it solidly variable. I love Rajas of the Ganges. It's a solid game. I really highly recommend this one. It's a good game. I even like the roll and write, by the way. The roll and write manages to hold its own. I don't know if it'll stay in my collection. The roll and write is because it feels like playing the game to a degree. I don't know if the roll might stay in my collection. It's here for now. I really like it, but that's Rajas of the Ganges. Next up, we have the Quacks of Quedlinburg. The Quacks of Quedlinburg came out a long time ago. A long time ago is relative. Everything's relative in time and space and all that stuff. But the Quacks of Quedlinburg is a push-your-luck game that came out from North Star Games, and people were obsessed. Everyone seemed to love this game. People couldn't hunt down copies of it fast enough, and I finally decided to get my hands in it. I was like, it was one of those times where I gave into the hype a little earlier than I usually do. Now, again, I'm a content creator now, so now I'm playing all the games on the front end, but back in the day when the first 7 years of my gaming hobby, before I did content creation, I actually tried to avoid the cult of the new. I tried to wait till a game settled, and in the case of the Quacks of Quedlinburg, I did wait, but I waited like 6 months instead of the usual year plus that I like to give things to see if they're still interesting a year down the road. Quacks of Quedlinburg, for reference, by the way, it's several years down the road now, and people still seem to like this game. But I played it, and I was like, that's good, but it's not great. It's a push your luck little engine. You build your bag, you pull things out of your bag, but I didn't feel there was enough agency in the game. I felt it was like, okay, great, you build your bag and that's it, and then you hope for the best across the 9 rounds of play. It's good, it's not great. My boxes fell over. I still feel that way about Quacks. I still feel that it's a good but not great game in terms of the pure mechanics of the game, but on the other hand, what has changed for me with this game is that it has continuously improved in terms of the sheer fun it gives me. I do think it's a game that's victim to luck, high degrees of luck, but the variability of the experience, especially as you add an expansion, just means you always have another engine you're trying to build in the push your luck game. Is it the most highly strategic game ever? No. Is there a lot of strategy? Yeah, there's a decent amount. Is there a ton of luck? Absolutely. Is it a lot of fun every single time I play it? It is. I got rid of Quacks the first time I played it, and again, like other games, as the years went by, sometimes I have doubts, sometimes I wonder if I'm wrong. In the case of Quacks, it's not my favorite game ever, to be very clear. In fact, Rolling Heights is a game that I think will replace my desire to play Quacks, although still, the tempting thing about Quacks compared to Rolling Heights is not yet available from AEG, but it has that bag building mechanism, that constant push your luck of just trying to get a little bit more. But the thing about Quacks that makes it stand out is the variability of the powers, and the pulling the chips from your bag is a lot of fun. It is consistently a good experience, and one that I'm happy that I got back. Next up, we have a recent one, the most recent from the games I got back. I just learned to pronounce this. Xia, that's what it was. I finally looked it up in a video. I think it's called Xia. Xia Legends of a Drift System. This is just the expansion box because it's easier to pull down than that box over there. But Xia Legends of a Drift System is a game that I loved when I first got it. I love this game. And I debated whether this fell in line with Through the Ages and Le Havre, but I don't know. In fact, I did a video a long time ago, not that long ago, maybe I'll link to it down below if I can recall it. It was 10 games. It was the best 10 games I don't own. That's what the video was. The best 10 games I don't own. And it specifically was a conversation around games that I've gotten rid of for one reason or another, but they were great games. I still held that they were great games. Doesn't matter the fact that I didn't own them. I understand why they're amazing. I just got rid of them for one reason or another. And Xia was number 2 on that list. Number 1 was Arkham Horror. Still have not got that one back because I still have Marvel Champions and I don't have room for 2 LCGs in my life. I just don't. There's too many games. There's not enough time. But Xia was number 2 on the list. It was a great experience that at some point or another I eventually got rid of, and I didn't know why. I just remember that it wasn't hitting the table anymore, and I was like, something about the charm of this open world sandbox adventure as you wander through space, as you mine different elements and asteroids and all these things, trying to collect your resources, as you try to gather fame, as you wander across the galaxy, taking down enemies, taking down friends and foes alike, wandering around, selling goods, exploring the galaxy, finding anything you can, rolling 20-sided dice, building up new ships, leveling up across the game. It's an incredible experience. It is an incredible experience. But it's also a long experience. The best version of Xia tends to come in at more than 2 hours. The best version of Xia tends to come in at 3 hours plus, which makes it harder to table. And also it can get a little samey. It's 3 hours of a lot of repetitiveness, and it's 3 hours of a lot of things not working well, of rolling poorly, of just finding yourself stranded in space, of losing that mission you have, of finding your finding the other person at the table, blowing you up with a well-placed missile when you're about to cash on the mission. It can get tedious across those 3 hours, and so there are reasons why Xia eventually left. But then there's equally as many reasons why I got it back. Mostly the fondness for the experience. The fact that it's it's the best sandbox game I've ever played. Whenever I play another sandbox game, every single time I feel myself yearning for Xia, and so eventually I just got back Xia. Now, I still have some of the doubts I had about it back then, but I didn't have the expansion. The expansion supposedly adds a lot, and one of the things the expansion adds, which makes it to me a game that I am more likely to table, is the solo mode. The solo campaign that they have, I cannot wait to dive into it, to see what this game does to me as a solo experience when it's always my turn, when I'm always able to do the thing that I want. I love Xia. It is the best sandbox game I've played. I've played a lot. I've played Merchants of Marauders. I've played Western Legends. I probably should think of more before I say I've played a lot, but I have played others. But this one to me is the best experience. And I don't even care if I win. There's luck in Xia, a decent amount of luck, but it's an experience that I dive into it just so I can explore the galaxy, just so I can do my thing, and Xia lets me do my thing. It's a great game. From there, we have Root. Now, Root is another interesting one. This is another one where arguably should be aligned with Le Havre and Through the Ages. You see, not always when I get a game back is it because my mind has changed on the game itself, and Root, my mind never really changed. This really should be with Le Havre and Through the Ages. Honestly, we should just call it a top 12. Feast of Odin and Orleans are different, but this should really be a top 12. Root is a game that I loved when I first played it. And it's another game that I avoided initially, not for that long, for maybe 8 months, 9 months. I waited till enough hype and buzz was generated that I was like, okay, fine, I'll pick it up. It was sold out at Gen Con. People were going crazy over it, selling for obscene prices, and eventually I grabbed a copy and I was like, you know what, I will try. I will see what this game has to offer. I want to find out what the buzz is about. And I sat down and I played it, and I was like, this game is utterly charming. And then I played it more. And then I played it more. And the problems with Root started to develop for me. And the problems were twofold. The problems in Root are there's a bunch of potential problems, but for me the problems were twofold. The first problem that I can almost forgive is the fact that Root, at least core game, before you enter the expansions do fix this, core game Root falls into a very specific pattern of you have to do this, I have to do that, you have to do that, you have to do that, and that's how we keep everyone in check in this game. That's how we ensure everyone actually has a chance of winning, by playing our prescribed homework assignment of a role as we go through Root. It's a good game. But at a certain point, I find myself a little bit irritated with the fact that I have to go ahead and crush the Woodland Alliance. And you have to go ahead and crush the Marquis de Cat. And you have to make sure not to trade with the Scoundrel. There's all these little rules as far as keeping everyone in check. So it feels like you're playing a prescribed role rather than actually having agency to do your best. Now sure, that argument can be made about any game when it comes down to it. You have to do X in order to win. That's always the case, but it felt more obvious and prescribed in Root. And it felt tied to the faction you picked. And I didn't love that aspect of it. Now, the expansions do help with that, that's for sure, but that leads to my other problem with Root, was the fact that when you teach new players Root, there's a large barrier to entry. It's not a hard game to learn, but it takes a long time to teach others all their prescribed roles, because you have to teach the core game of Root, and then you have to teach them every single role at the table. I do not believe that you can properly play Root by teaching you your role. I have to teach you every single faction in play so that you understand how to actually play, which means teaching new players Root is often a 45-minute to an hour-long experience, which made it harder to table. Then along came COVID-19. COVID is actually responsible for 3 of these games being back in my collection, at least 3, possibly more. We have in the Oracle of Delphi, we have Root, and we have the other Stefan Feld game, which we haven't gotten to yet. But COVID lowered my game group. Even once game group started up again, I didn't expand it to the whole game group again. I kept it to a core selection of 4 people, myself included. And that meant Root could be tabled with those core 4. And we got Root back. 3 of us already knew it. The last one had to be taught it. We taught it, and we proceeded to play Root a lot again. And now Root has entered my permanent collection once again. Permanent is a relative term. Nothing is ever permanent. But Root is such a good game. As long as you don't have to frequently teach it to new people. I do not... Again, ultimately everything to me comes down to, will I pull you off the shelf? And if there's a new person at the table, I'm less likely to pull Root off the shelf. I'd rather pull something off that either they know already or that I could teach them in 25 minutes as opposed to an hour of teach. It does make Root harder to table, and that is a strike against Root. It's the sad reality of just the way the world works. Sometimes games are harder to table, and it is what it is. But Root right now is sticking around, which means now it's time to grab that game that fell. Give me 1 second. And we're back with Friday. Friday is a game that I played back in the day. This is my first attempt. Actually, it might have been my second, I don't remember. Either Space Hulk Death Angel or Friday was my first attempt at solo gaming. Way back in the day, I was like, hey, let me try. I've heard of the solo game thing. Let me give it a shot. Let me see what it's like. And so I don't remember which one happened first, but both Friday and Space Hulk Death Angel were played, and neither one stuck around. They both were interesting in their own little way, but they weren't compelling enough. They were fun little experiences that I saw what the potential for solo gaming was, but it wasn't enough to pull me in, and so I shelved solo gaming. I got rid of both those games, and I called it a day. And then like 4 years later, I don't remember exactly when, it might have been 3 years later, it might have been 2 years later, it might have been 6 months later, it wasn't 6 months later. It was probably like 2 to 4 years later. I played Spirit Island, solo. I played Spirit Island, not solo first, but I dove into it solo because I wanted to play it, and I was like, my game night had just canceled on me, everyone had canceled. It was one of those rare times where my Thursday night game night fell apart and it was just me, and I was like, I'm pulling out Spirit Island, I'm going to try it solo because I love this game and I want to see what it does. And I fell in love with solo gaming. It's not my go-to mode of gaming, not in the slightest. The other modes of gaming, playing with other players, is still my default. But Spirit Island was the game that showed me that solo gaming doesn't have to be about small little puzzles. It could be about fully fleshed out experiences. And I fell in love with solo gaming. And then at a certain point, I got back Friday and I got back Space Hulk Death Angel to see how my renewed perception of solo games had changed. Space Hulk Death Angel, I liked, but I got rid of it. I found it to be a little too random and a little too brutal and not enough control over the experience, which is something some people will say about Friday. But maybe it's just the nature of, I found the puzzle in Friday. I know how to play Friday. I've optimized around it. So sometimes it just comes down to the puzzles we see and the puzzles we don't. If I can't figure out the puzzle, the game is frustrating. If I can figure out the puzzle, the game is rewarding. And in Friday, I figured out the puzzle. Even as players sit there and say they never managed to beat this game, I have leveled up in this game, I destroy this game, I continuously level it up and continuously crush the pirates, and I have fun beating my score every single time, and I do not like beat your own score games. I like Friday. It's deck building, which is a mechanic I like, and it's deck weeding, more specifically, which is a mechanic I love. But this puzzle of trying to survive until you eventually face off against the pirates and win is a challenging experience that I got rid of when I didn't appreciate what solo games can be, and I got it back when I learned to appreciate, and I love this game. It's not a game I pull it often because it is a little samey, but it's a game that every 6 to 9 months I'll look around my shelf and I'll have 20 minutes to myself and I'll pull off one of my games, and it's usually an Oniverse game or Friday for that quick filler solo experience. And that's Friday. Which means now move to the other side of the piles of games that crashed over here, and we have Lorenzo Il Magnifico. And this is one that I'm not actually wrong about. I don't actually know what I'm calling this video, by the way. It might be called Top 10 Games I Was Wrong About. It might be called Top 10 Games I Got Back and Was Wrong. I don't know. We'll figure out the title later. But Lorenzo Il Magnifico, I don't believe I was wrong about. I believe everything I thought about Lorenzo was on point. For me, what changed Lorenzo was the expansion. Lorenzo Il Magnifico is a heavy Euro game, or medium weight Euro game, in which you are placing down your workers, just prescribed, their value prescribed by these little dice you're going to be rolling, and you're placing them down in various towers to gather various cards that will build your engine in a variety of ways, and it's an immensely satisfying experience, and I prefer Coimbra. That's what it comes down to. I prefer Coimbra. Lorenzo was a great game. I enjoyed my plays of Lorenzo immensely, but Coimbra to me was a better game. That is not the commonly held opinion. Lorenzo is actually touted as being the better game over Coimbra, but, you know, different strokes for different folks. And for me, and not just me, but my entire game group, we loved Coimbra and we really liked Lorenzo Il Magnifico. And so eventually I realized there was not really a situation in which I preferred to play Lorenzo over Coimbra, and so I got rid of Lorenzo. And then I heard the expansion makes Lorenzo better. And Lorenzo was already good. It was already good. It wasn't like it was a bad game. It was a great game. And so making it better might make it on par with Coimbra for me. I still prefer Coimbra. I still do. But now the gap is minimal. Minimal to close to non-existent. Lorenzo with the expansion adds more content to the game. It adds more stuff. And it adds these families. It adds just more powers you can have. It adds another tower. It adds new sets of cards. It adds just a fun new way to... It adds these little lock tokens. It adds new fun ways to experience the same game. It adds just a drop more. It moved it from a 4 to me to a 4.5. And where Coimbra is still a 5 to me, that puts it close enough that a 4.5 in this genre is a game that I really enjoy. And so Lorenzo with the expansion to me became a game that I, well, got back. And this time I'm keeping. Not forever. Nothing's forever. Nothing's a guarantee. Everything is always subject to will I or won't I pull you off the shelf? Do I have that drive to sit down and play you, or am I kind of done with you? I would love to play Lorenzo. Even right now, I would happily sit down and play Lorenzo. I absolutely have the drive. Number 8 is Bruges. Bruges is the other pandemic-based game that I got back. This is the third and final of the games that I got back because of COVID. Because I had a chance to die. Actually, was there another one? Targi. I got back Targi because of COVID. Targi should be on this list. I played a lot of Targi on Board Game Arena, and that reminded me of why I liked it. Yeah, so Targi's back. But Targi's also not as safe. So I'm not actually quite as compelled by Targi. I like it, but we'll save Targi for another day. It arguably should be on this list. Not all my lists are perfect. Sometimes I remember things as I'm talking. It is what it is. Bruges from Stefan Feld is my second favorite Stefan Feld game. The Castles of Burgundy still has the distinction of being my favorite Stefan Feld game, but Bruges is number 2. Bruges is absolutely fantastic, and it's a game that I got rid of when I first played it. I think part of that was because my wife didn't enjoy it. And when you play a game with somebody else, their experience does taint your own, for better or for worse. If you're having a good time with somebody else, it can elevate the experience. If you're having a bad time with somebody else, it can degrade the experience. My wife did not find Bruges compelling. I did. This is doing our seeking of every Stefan Feld game because we love the Castles of Burgundy. It's one of her favorite games. It's one of my favorite games. And we loved it and we were seeking out everything. We like a lot of his games. But Bruges didn't work for her. And so I played it. I liked it. I had fun. But I didn't feel the need to try to get the game tabled over other games we both knew and loved. I didn't feel the need to try to push that one through. And so Bruges sat there and left. This is what happened with it. It just left. But then again, during COVID, I was playing games online with my friends, and we like this style of game, and so I pulled up Bruges and Yakata, and we started diving in, and we adored it. Like, it's so much fun. Bruges is such a good game of managing your cards in different ways, assigning them to a million different things, to building your canals, to building the statues, to moving up the progression in the center, to placing houses, to putting people down. The vast variety of abilities you have in Bruges is absolutely fantastic. It is one of the better Euro games I have in my collection, and I'm always down to play it. It's so good. This is one of those games that's being reprinted by Queen Games as Hamburg, I believe. I'm not as compelled by Hamburg. I'll probably check it out at some point to see which one I prefer, but honestly, I love this. I love the art of this. I love the game. It's such a good experience. But it took playing it over COVID. It took playing it over Yukata again and again. We must have logged 30 plus plays over a several month period. It became one of our go-to online games. It's one of the most played games in my collection, at least in this genre of like game length and game weight, just because of how easy it was to sit down and play 3 or 4 games of Bruges every single night for a ridiculously long period of time. It has become an absolute staple for me. I love Bruges. Not as much as Castle of Burgundy, but it's darn close. I think well, we won't talk about the why one versus the other for today, but they're very, very close. Bruges is an excellent experience, and it's one that I absolutely was wrong about. Another one I was wrong about, although another one that the expansion certainly helped, is Istanbul. Istanbul from AEG. I didn't realize this was an AEG title. Huh, that's interesting. From All Rock Entertainment Group, Istanbul is another game that was very well loved by a lot of people, and I sought it out, and I played it, and I was like, that was fun. And just like Raj of the Ganges, very similar to Raj of the Ganges, I was like, I'm good. I don't need to play this again. It was a good game, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't need to play it again. Not all good games need to be played again. It's just the reality of the world. And so I got rid of Istanbul. Istanbul is a game of almost worker placement as you parade your people around the board, but you have to be mindful of your assistants because your assistants are your track back. And so you're constantly trying to take actions and then return to spots to pick up your assistants again. It leads to a fascinating little puzzle, but a fascinating puzzle that the core game and action selection around the puzzle I thought was good, but not absolutely compelling. One day, though, I decided that I might have been wrong. Again, like Raj of the Ganges, I woke up one day and I had the compelling desire to play that game that I had played a long time ago, and so I got it back, this time with the expansions. I still have not played Letters and Seals, but I have played Mocha and Bakshish. And Mocha and Bakshish took the game from, hey, I'm glad I got this back, to I love this game. The extra element of decision space you have as you add coffee to the game and as you add the different elements that coffee provides, the different buildings they provide, that little blocking tile, it adds fun little powers as you can zip around along the entire board. It is such a good puzzle. It was already a good puzzle, but something about it felt like it was a good puzzle with just needing to drop more, and adding coffee, adding coffee to anything makes it better, and it certainly made Istanbul better for me. I adore Istanbul in its current form. I think it's a great game. It was probably, I don't know what it would have been without the base game. It might have been a 3.5 for me, but even now, my love for the game colors it, and I'm tempted to call even the base game a 4 to 5. But I don't know. I've never actually officially reviewed this one, but for me, the entire package as a whole is a 4.5. The entire package of Istanbul is a game that I'm always happy to dive into, and I always enjoy it, and I should at some point pull out Letters and Seals and see if it makes the game better. But what I do know is Istanbul is accessible to gateway gamers. It's easy to play. It's easy to teach. It is compelling to dive into. It plays in 60 to 90 minutes, and it gives me a rewarding experience every single time I play it. I love Istanbul. It's a really, really good game. I guess that's where I am with this. I like it. That's what I'm saying. I was wrong about it. Although, again, expansion definitely cemented it as sticking around as opposed to happy to dive into it again. My last game on the list, I've talked about before, is Everddell. Everddell is a game I was absolutely wrong about. Everddell is one of my favorite games in my collection, at least right now, but it wasn't when I first played it. When I first played it, I had an interesting experience with Everddell, and I think it's because I didn't know what to really expect. Everddell is a game, it's a tableau building game of a little bit of worker placement, a little bit of, not really deck building, but managing your hand. Worker placement and hand management, let's say, as you try to manage the variety of seasons in the game. And you start off the game being told that, hey, you can build out 15 cards, and only 15 cards, and then every single card seems like a struggle and a chore, and you walk into Season 1, ending Season 1, and you're like, I have 3 cards, I don't know how I'll ever get 15, this thing is ridiculous, everything here is way too tight, and you can't actually get stuff done. And before you know it, the end of the game approaches, and you're well above 15 cards. You're trying to contain it and constrain it all to 15 cards, and you're thinking to yourself, I should have taken that more expensive card instead of all these cheap cards, because I just don't have space for them in my tableau anymore. And I think that toss and turn of the first game, of not really knowing what to expect from Everddell, meant it so that I enjoyed my first game, but I was a little bit off my game. I liked it, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was, and so I did get rid of it. I liked it, but I got rid of it. And unlike Raj of the Ganges, unlike Istanbul before it, I woke up one day several months later thinking, I want to play that game again. And so I got it back. And it has become one of my favorite games in my collection. It's a 5 out of 5 for me, and that's without even having really dove into all the expansions. I love what Everddell does, but I think I needed to know what to expect. I think I needed to know what to expect from the experience as I dove into it. Understanding that there's this push and pull, that it feels both open and constraining at the same time, that there's a puzzle to be had, and a way to place your workers, and a way to build out your hand, and a way to cascade getting those free placements of the specific people into the houses once you have those residential areas, whatever, the buildings that you can put people into. There's such a fun puzzle to be had, and the base game does get a little samey, but not that samey. I've played this game multiple times, the base game alone, dozens of times, the base game alone, and it's not dozens is a bit harsh, 6 or 7 times base game alone before diving into the expansion, and I still thoroughly enjoy just the base game, and the expansions only further open up the experience in ways that make the game continuously compelling. I love Everddell, but I didn't when I first played it. I was intrigued with it when I first played it, but it wasn't solidified for me. It took time, it took expectation for me to understand that Everddell was an absolutely great game. And these are the 10 or 14, depending how you're counting it, games that I was wrong about. 12, let's call it 12. The other two, Feast for Odin and Orleans, I still need to actually see if I was right or wrong. Because this is where we talk about the fact that there will be a part 2 to this video. I don't know when. It might be in 2 weeks, it might be in 2 months. Where I talk about 10 games I got back and then got rid of again. Because most of the time when I get rid of a game, I would say the majority of the time when I get rid of a game, there's a reason why I got rid of it. And the regret and the reluctance and the wondering come around, and I pick it up again, and then I'm like, I know exactly why you left the collection. This is not that video, but that video will come. In any case, and until next time, thanks so much for sticking around. I appreciate you watching this far. As always, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you have a good one.